The spotlight found Michael Jackson when he was only 5 years old. While other children played with toys and dreamed of adventure, young Michael stood on stages in smoky clubs, singing his heart out to audiences who couldn't believe such a voice came from such a small body. His brothers stood beside him, moving in rhythm, but everyone's eyes locked onto Michael. There was something different about him, something electric that made people lean forward in their seats. His father, Joseph Jackson, saw that spark too, and he knew exactly what to do with it. Every day after school, while neighborhood kids rode bikes and played ball, Michael went straight to rehearsal. The basement of their small Gary, Indiana home became a factory of perfection. Joseph stood in the corner with a belt in his hand, not as decoration but as motivation. When Michael missed a step, he felt it. When he sang a note slightly off-key, he heard about it for hours. The other brothers got the same treatment, but Joseph pushed Michael hardest because Michael had the most potential. The boy learned quickly that mistakes weren't just wrong, they were dangerous. The Jackson 5 exploded onto the national scene when Michael was 11. Suddenly, this child from a struggling neighborhood stood on television sets across America, performing for millions. Ed Sullivan, Dick Clark, Diana Ross, they all wanted him. Michael delivered every single time, his smile so bright it could light up the darkest room. Young girls screamed his name. Adults marveled at his talent. Critics called him a prodigy, a once-in-a-generation performer. Nobody asked if he was tired. Nobody wondered if he wanted to be somewhere else. The show must go on, and Michael Jackson was the show. Behind hotel room doors, the reality looked different. While his brothers went out to explore new cities, Michael sat alone, reading books and watching television. He pressed his face against windows, watching other kids his age walk freely down streets, laughing without microphones, dancing without choreography. He wanted to join them, to be normal just for one afternoon, but normal wasn't an option for him anymore. Fame had already built walls around his life, and every hit song made those walls thicker. His mother, Catherine, saw the sadness in his eyes. She held him when he cried, which was more often than anyone knew. She whispered that God had given him a gift, that millions of people needed his music, that sacrifice was part of greatness. Michael believed her because he had to believe in something. But late at night, when everyone else slept, he stared at the ceiling and wondered what he'd given up. Childhood wasn't supposed to feel like work. Happiness wasn't supposed to require such effort. Yet every morning, he woke up, painted on that smile, and became the Michael Jackson everyone expected. The hits kept coming. I Want You Back sold millions. ABC dominated the charts. I'll Be There became an anthem. Each success meant more tours, more performances, more time under lights that burned hot enough to make him sweat through his clothes. Michael never complained publicly. He gave interviews where he laughed and joked, where he seemed like the happiest kid in the world. Reporters ate it up. Fans believed it completely. The truth stayed locked inside him, a secret he carried like a stone in his chest. By 13, Michael had already lived more than most adults. He'd traveled the world, met presidents, performed for royalty. He'd also lost something precious that he could never get back. Innocence doesn't survive under stage lights. Trust doesn't flourish when love feels conditional on performance. The boy who smiled for cameras had learned to hide his pain so well that even he sometimes forgot it was there. But pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, growing quietly in the darkness, until one day it becomes too heavy to carry alone. Becoming an adult didn't free Michael Jackson, it complicated everything. At 21, he left his family's management and stepped into the world alone, carrying both unlimited potential and devastating insecurity. The public saw confidence. They saw moonwalks and sequin gloves, revolutionary music videos and sold-out stadiums. They saw a king claiming his throne. But Michael saw something different when he looked in the mirror. He saw every flaw his father had pointed out, every imperfection magnified by years of criticism. The face looking back at him became his enemy. Thriller changed music forever. Released in 1982, it became more than an album, it became a cultural phenomenon that shattered every record in existence. Michael Jackson wasn't just famous anymore, he was the biggest star on planet Earth. MTV played his videos constantly. Radio stations competed for his songs. Children imitated his dance moves in playgrounds worldwide. He'd achieved what most artists only dream about, yet the victory tasted hollow. Success didn't fill the emptiness inside him. Applause didn't heal old wounds. The more he gave to the world, the less he felt he had left for himself. The plastic surgery started quietly. A nose job, he told people, just to help him breathe better. Then another, to refine the first. Then procedures he never discussed publicly, changes that made tabloids speculate wildly about his appearance. Michael read every article, absorbed every cruel joke, internalized every criticism. Some said he was trying to look white. Others claimed he hated himself. The truth was more complicated and more painful. He was trying to erase Joseph's face from his own, trying to become someone new, someone who didn't carry the weight of a stolen childhood. Each surgery was an attempt to control something when everything else felt chaotic. His skin condition, vitiligo, began destroying his pigmentation in patches during his 20s. Michael tried hiding it with makeup, blending the spots, maintaining the appearance of normalcy. But the condition progressed aggressively, leaving him with no choice but to depigment the remaining areas for consistency. He made the decision privately, knowing the world would misunderstand. And misunderstand they did. Accusations of self-hatred followed him everywhere. People who'd never experienced the condition judged him mercilessly. Michael tried explaining in interviews, showing medical proof, pleading for understanding. Some believed him. Most didn't. The man who'd given so much joy to the world couldn't convince that world to show him compassion. Loneliness became his constant companion. Michael filled Neverland Ranch with amusement park rides, movie theaters, and zoo animals, creating a fantasy world where childhood could exist eternally. He invited disadvantaged children to visit, watching them play with an intensity that unnerved some observers. They saw something sinister. Michael saw the childhood he'd lost, the innocence he desperately wanted to reclaim. He genuinely believed he was helping these kids, giving them magical experiences they'd remember forever. The purity of his intention never protected him from suspicion. Relationships proved impossible to maintain. How do you trust people when everyone wants something from you? When friendship might be calculated, when love could be performance. Michael dated famous women, Diana Ross, Brooke Shields, others whose names filled gossip columns. But real intimacy required vulnerability he couldn't afford. Opening up meant revealing the damage inside, and he'd spent decades perfecting the art of hiding that damage. So he remained alone in crowds, isolated in fame, desperately seeking connection while pushing people away. The pressure never stopped building. Every album had to outsell the previous one. Every tour had to be bigger, more spectacular. Michael pushed himself brutally, rehearsing until his feet bled, perfecting performances until exhaustion became his natural state. He existed in a cycle of creating and collapsing, giving everything to his art because art was the only place he still felt in control. Music made sense when nothing else did. Dancing expressed emotions he couldn't speak. But even that sanctuary began crumbling as his body started betraying him. Chronic pain from years of intense dancing plagued him constantly. Injuries accumulated, never healing properly because there was always another show, another commitment, another obligation. Michael turned to prescription medication for relief. Pills helped him sleep. Pills helped him wake up. Pills helped him perform when his body screamed for rest. Doctors prescribed them easily, too easily, seduced by his fame or blind to the danger. Michael convinced himself he was managing, that he had everything under control. He didn't realize he was building another prison, one with invisible bars that would eventually trap him completely. The brightest smile in entertainment history now hid pain that pills could only mask temporarily. The accusations came in 1993, detonating like a bomb in Michael Jackson's life. A 13-year-old boy claimed inappropriate behavior. The details spread through media outlets like wildfire, each report more sensational than the last. Michael's world, carefully constructed over decades, collapsed in days. The man who'd brought joy to billions suddenly faced the most horrifying allegations imaginable. He maintained his innocence desperately, passionately, but the damage was instant and catastrophic. Public opinion shifted with brutal speed. Yesterday's hero became today's suspect. Television cameras captured Michael everywhere, hunting him like prey. Helicopters followed his car. Photographers jumped from bushes. Reporters shouted questions designed to provoke reactions. The police investigation became a media circus, with every development leaked and analyzed endlessly. Michael's privacy evaporated completely. Even his body became public property when investigators demanded to photograph him, documenting marks described by his accuser. The humiliation crushed something inside him. He'd spent his life bringing happiness to others, and now the world viewed him as a monster. The settlement, reached in 1994 for over $20 million, was meant to end the nightmare. Instead, it fueled speculation. Why pay if you're innocent? The question echoed everywhere, in every conversation about Michael Jackson. He'd followed his lawyer's advice, choosing to protect himself from a lengthy trial that would destroy what remained of his reputation. But the public saw guilt in that choice. They saw admission in his desire for privacy. Michael tried explaining that the legal system had failed him, that civil cases shouldn't determine criminal guilt, that sometimes survival means retreat. Nobody listened. The damage was permanent. His behavior grew increasingly erratic. Michael appeared in interviews looking disoriented, speaking in whispers, seeming disconnected from reality. The 1995 HBO special with Diane Sawyer showed a man barely holding himself together. His new wife, Lisa Marie Presley, sat beside him, trying to validate his innocence, but her presence raised more questions. Was the marriage real or strategic? Did she truly believe him, or was this elaborate damage control? The relationship ended within 2 years, another casualty of his destroyed reputation. Music became his only defense. The History album released in 1995 contained songs like Scream and They Don't Care About Us, raw expressions of anger and betrayal. Michael poured his pain into every note, creating art from agony. Critics acknowledged the quality but questioned his state of mind. Was this genius or breakdown? The line between the two had never been thinner. Performances remained spectacular, but now audiences saw desperation behind the brilliance. They saw a man fighting for his life through the only medium he truly understood. The medication use intensified dramatically. Pain wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional, spiritual, all-consuming. Michael needed to sleep but couldn't quiet his mind. He needed to function but couldn't face reality sober. Doctors enabled his addiction, prescribing whatever he requested, blinded by fame or complicit in his destruction. Some used fake names to hide the paper trail. Others simply didn't care about the consequences. Michael descended deeper into pharmaceutical dependence, each pill promising relief but delivering only temporary numbness. His appearance changed more drastically. The surgeries continued, each one making him look less like himself, less like anyone. His nose became almost skeletal. His skin appeared unnaturally pale. Rumors about his health multiplied: lupus, anorexia, cancer. Michael denied everything, maintaining the fiction that he was fine, that nothing was wrong. But photographs told different stories. They showed a man disappearing, fading from existence even while standing in plain sight. The king of pop was becoming a ghost, haunting his own life. A second marriage to Debbie Rowe produced 2 children through arrangements that seemed more clinical than romantic. Michael desperately wanted to be a father, to give children the love he'd never adequately received. But even parenthood couldn't fill the void inside him. The relationship with Rowe dissolved quickly, leaving Michael with custody and more fuel for tabloid speculation. Every aspect of his life became fodder for mockery. The dangling baby incident in Berlin, where he briefly held his infant over a balcony railing, turned into an international scandal. His judgment was questioned. His fitness as a parent was debated publicly. The man who'd once been universally beloved now couldn't make any move without triggering outrage. Michael retreated further into isolation, surrounded by employees who said yes to everything and children who needed protection he struggled to provide. The second round of accusations in 2003 nearly destroyed Michael Jackson completely. Another young boy, another family making claims, another media feeding frenzy that painted him as a predator. This time, criminal charges followed. The trial in 2005 became a spectacle of American justice at its worst. Cameras recorded every moment outside the courthouse. Analysts dissected every expression on Michael's face. The prosecution paraded witnesses who described behavior that sounded damning. The defense revealed the accuser's family had a history of false claims and extortion attempts. Michael attended court looking increasingly fragile. Some days he wore pajama bottoms, claiming back pain made dressing impossible. Other days he appeared in sunglasses and elaborate outfits, performing even in his darkest hour. The jury saw a broken man defending himself against charges that would horrify anyone. Fans gathered outside, holding signs proclaiming his innocence, but their support couldn't penetrate the darkness consuming him. Each day of testimony felt like torture. Each revelation, whether true or false, stripped away another layer of dignity. The not guilty verdict in June 2005 should have brought relief. On every count, the jury found insufficient evidence. Michael was legally innocent, vindicated by the system. But vindication doesn't erase trauma. The trial had exposed every aspect of his life to judgment. His parenting was criticized. His home was invaded. His relationships were dissected. Even acquittal couldn't restore what had been destroyed. Michael left California immediately after the verdict, fleeing to Bahrain, then Ireland, wandering like a refugee from his own life. He couldn't return to Neverland, the place held too many painful memories now. The ranch that symbolized his dreams became a monument to his nightmares. Financial problems mounted catastrophically. Years of extravagant spending, legal fees, and mismanagement by advisors had drained his fortune. The man who'd once earned hundreds of millions faced potential bankruptcy. His music catalog, including the valuable Beatles songs, was leveraged as collateral. Neverland Ranch went into foreclosure. Michael, who'd lived like royalty, suddenly struggled to maintain basic expenses. The humiliation cut deep. He'd worked since childhood, given everything to his career, and now faced poverty. Pride prevented him from asking for help. Shame prevented him from admitting the severity of his situation. His children became his only source of genuine happiness. Prince, Paris, and Blanket represented innocence in a world that had shown Michael only cruelty. He protected them obsessively, covering their faces in public, shielding them from the media that had tortured him. The kids knew their father was special but didn't understand the weight he carried. They saw his playfulness, his creativity, his love. They didn't see the pills he took to sleep, the pain he masked constantly, the hopelessness that crept in during quiet moments. Michael wanted to be the father he'd never had, but damage doesn't disappear just because you love your children. The comeback announcement in March 2009 shocked the entertainment world. Michael Jackson would return to performing with a 50-show residency in London called This Is It. The press conference showed a man seemingly energized by purpose. Fans erupted with excitement. Tickets sold out within hours. Michael promised these would be his final performances, a farewell to the stage that had been his home and prison. Behind the scenes, however, panic was setting in. His body couldn't handle what his ambition demanded. Decades of dancing had destroyed his joints. Years of medication had weakened his constitution. The rehearsals became increasingly difficult. AEG Live, the concert promoter, applied pressure relentlessly. They'd invested millions in the production. Backing out wasn't an option. Michael tried to meet expectations, pushing through exhaustion and pain. Rehearsal footage showed flashes of his old genius, the moves still sharp, the voice still powerful. But between takes, he looked exhausted, disoriented. Staff members expressed concern. Some suggested postponing. Michael refused. He couldn't disappoint people again. He couldn't admit weakness. The shows had to happen because he'd promised, and Michael Jackson never broke promises to his fans. Dr. Conrad Murray entered Michael's life as a solution to his sleep problems. The cardiologist began administering propofol, a powerful anesthetic meant only for surgical use, to help Michael sleep at night. This wasn't medicine, it was chemical unconsciousness, a dangerous shortcut that no responsible doctor would provide outside a hospital setting. Michael called it his milk and believed it was safe when monitored. Murray assured him everything was under control. Neither man understood they were playing with death. The nightly ritual of propofol infusions became routine, mundane even. They ignored every warning sign because desperation makes people reckless. Michael needed rest. Murray needed money. The arrangement satisfied both needs until it didn't. On June 25, 2009, everything that could go wrong did. The brightest smile in history would never shine again. June 25, 2009, started like any other day of rehearsals and preparation. Michael Jackson woke at his rented Holmby Hills mansion, thinking about the London shows, worrying about details, carrying the weight he always carried. By afternoon, that weight had become unbearable. Dr. Murray arrived to help him sleep, just as he'd done many nights before. The propofol flowed through Michael's veins, promising relief. Then something went catastrophically wrong. His breathing slowed. His heart struggled. The monitors should have alarmed, but Murray was allegedly distracted, making phone calls, stepping away. By the time he noticed something was wrong, Michael had stopped breathing. The paramedics arrived to find chaos. Murray was performing CPR on a bed, which any medical professional knows is ineffective. Michael's body was warm but lifeless, his eyes fixed. They moved him to the floor, administered emergency protocols, but everyone in that room understood the truth. Too much time had passed. Too much damage had occurred. At UCLA Medical Center, doctors made desperate attempts at revival. They shocked his heart. They pushed medications. They tried everything medical science offered. Nothing worked. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Joseph Jackson was pronounced dead. The king of pop had left the stage forever. The announcement hit the world like an earthquake. Within minutes, news websites crashed from traffic. Twitter exploded with disbelief. Television networks interrupted regular programming. People stood in streets, crying, unable to process that Michael Jackson was gone. He was only 50 years old. He had shows scheduled. He had children who needed him. Death wasn't supposed to come this soon, not like this, not to him. Fans gathered at Neverland, at his childhood home in Gary, at his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They brought flowers and candles and photographs. They played his music through speakers, dancing through tears, celebrating the joy he'd given while mourning the pain he'd endured. The investigation unfolded rapidly. Detectives discovered the propofol and other medications. They interviewed Murray, who initially claimed he'd only given Michael a small amount. As evidence accumulated, the true scope of negligence became clear. Murray had turned a bedroom into an anesthesia suite without proper equipment. He'd left his patient unmonitored. He'd delayed calling emergency services. The involuntary manslaughter charge filed against him seemed insufficient to many. This wasn't just negligence, it was reckless disregard for human life. The trial in 2011 provided some accountability, with Murray receiving 4 years in prison, but no sentence could bring Michael back. The public narrative around Michael Jackson shifted dramatically after his death. The tabloids that had tormented him suddenly published glowing tributes. Critics who'd dismissed his later work now praised his genius. People who'd believed the allegations reconsidered their positions. Death granted Michael the compassion life had denied him. The memorial service at Staples Center became a global event, with his golden casket displayed before millions watching worldwide. Stevie Wonder sang. Mariah Carey performed. Magic Johnson spoke about Michael's generosity. His daughter Paris, only 11 years old, approached the microphone trembling, and spoke words that shattered hearts everywhere. Ever since I was born, Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. And I just wanted to say I love him so much. The This Is It rehearsal footage, released as a documentary, revealed what might have been. The film showed Michael still brilliant, still innovative, still pushing boundaries even in his fragile state. Audiences watched knowing these were his final performances, his last dances, his farewell to the art he'd devoted his life to. The documentary earned over $260 million globally, proving his star power hadn't diminished. Every frame was precious now, every glimpse of him moving sacred. People saw the perfectionist working, the artist creating, the man who'd never stopped giving everything to music. His children grew up without him, navigating a world that would forever identify them as Michael Jackson's kids. Paris struggled publicly with the pressure and pain, eventually finding her voice as an advocate for mental health. Prince pursued education and business ventures, honoring his father's memory through action rather than spotlight. Blanket, renamed Bye Guy, chose privacy, appearing rarely in public. Catherine Jackson raised them with the love Michael had wanted for them, trying to provide stability in the chaos fame created. The kids inherited their father's estate, which grew to billions through savvy management and continued interest in his music. Financially, they were secure. Emotionally, they carried the complicated legacy of loving someone the world couldn't fully understand. The allegations that haunted Michael during life continue sparking debate after death. The Leaving Neverland documentary in 2019 presented accusers telling their stories in graphic detail. Supporters pointed to inconsistencies and motives. Detractors argued where there's smoke, there's fire. The truth remains elusive, buried with Michael and locked in memories of those who were there. What's undeniable is that Michael Jackson lived a profoundly damaged life, shaped by abuse, isolated by fame, and tortured by forces both external and internal. Whether monster or victim or something more complicated, he was undeniably human, flawed, broken, desperate for love he never felt he deserved. Music became his truest legacy. The numbers tell part of the story: over 400 million records sold worldwide, 13 Grammy Awards, induction into multiple halls of fame. But statistics can't capture what Michael Jackson meant to people. His songs provided soundtrack to countless lives. His dancing inspired generations to move. His artistry proved that pop music could be both commercially successful and genuinely innovative. Young artists cite him as inspiration constantly. His influence permeates modern music, from production techniques to performance standards. The moonwalk remains iconic. Thriller still dominates Halloween. Man in the Mirror still challenges people to change. The final truth about Michael Jackson is that he gave everything to the world and paid a terrible price for that generosity. He spent 50 years performing, creating, entertaining, and very little time healing from the wounds that drove him to pursue perfection so relentlessly. The brightest smile in entertainment history hid the deepest pain. Behind the sequin gloves and revolutionary videos was a little boy who just wanted to be loved unconditionally, accepted completely, allowed to rest finally. He never found that peace in life. Perhaps in death, away from stages and cameras and judgment, Michael Jackson finally discovered the silence he'd been seeking all along. The music stopped. The dancing ended. But the memory of what he created, and the tragedy of what he endured, will echo through generations. He was the king of pop, yes, but more importantly, he was a human being who suffered profoundly while bringing joy to billions. That contradiction defines his story, and that story will never truly end as long as someone somewhere presses play and hears that unforgettable voice once again.